Welcome to the next episode of Independence for America. At Independence for America, we tell the stories of independent candidates running for state and local office. My guest today is Justin Green. Justin was recently sworn in on the Deptford Township School Board in New Jersey. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you for having me on the show, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my story.
All right, great. Justin is about 19 years old, right?
Correct.
And you are, to the best of your knowledge, the youngest elected leader in New Jersey. So that's really exciting. So tell me a little bit about your childhood and what motivated you to run for the school board.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in Deptford, New Jersey, with my two brothers and my parents. It's a suburban town in Gloucester County, just outside Philadelphia. And I've lived here my entire life. And I would have to say my deep appreciation for this community is what inspired me to serve. As a kid, I think I've always been drawn to leadership or service of some sort. From a young age, I joined Scouts, eventually earning leadership positions. And I think that is what shaped my ability to advocate for others. Scouting has taught me to problem solve, take initiative, and never be afraid to speak up. And I think these are skills that became essential later in my journey in public service. Education has always been an important part of my journey as well. As a young person, I chose to attend the county high school, which is a trade school. And that's where I started my advocacy for students and fighting for fair policies that benefited my classmates. And it's with that same passion that led me to attend Rowan University, which is a small state school in my county, and where I now study political science and minor in law justice studies. And I think this reinforces why public service is so important to me, is staying connected to our local community and really staying engaged with our residents.
This is a really good story, and I hope a lot of young people are listening to this right now. So you're kind of a senior in high school, and I'm assuming you went to some school board meetings, and then you decided, I think I might do this. Could you kind of go through your decision-making process?
Yeah, so I would have to say my journey in public service, it started with just one speech at a board meeting. It started in February of 2022. I was a 16-year-old junior in high school, and my township, the Deptford Board of Education, proposed cutting busing and tuition for Deptford students that attend the county school, the school that I attend. And I knew this decision would have left so many students without an option in education to attend the school that I attend. And I knew I couldn't stay silent, and I knew that students deserved the same option that I did. So I attended the next board meeting and I spoke out against this decision. And I did expect my concerns to be taken seriously, because it's not every day a high school student goes up to a board meeting and speaks directly about the impact of their decisions. But instead, I was actually ignored, and it became painfully clear to me that students didn't really have a voice in decisions that affected them most. And so I would have to say that moment changed everything. I kept showing up and I kept speaking out. And eventually people started to listen. It was because of my advocacy that I was appointed as the first student member of the Board of Education at 17 when I was a senior. And in this role, I successfully pushed for free menstrual products in our schools, which later became state law, and worked to ensure that every student had a decision in their education. But I would say my work there was not done. After I graduated, more decisions came out from my town. They were going to give students an alternate lunch that had an outstanding balance. They later rescinded that policy. They also recently announced that they would stop busing for their own students to attend their high school and their middle school to save money on transportation costs for students living within a couple miles of the school. That decision was also later rescinded, and it left a clear mark on me that I knew I had to stand up and offer something to our community. And so that is why at 19 years old, I decided to run for the office myself. So the same school board that once ignored me. And the campaign was quite an interesting journey. I was running against two incumbents and one write-in candidate.
Wow.
And I knew people would question whether my age had, at my age, whether I had what it took to lead. But I knocked on doors and I listened to our community members, and I shared my vision for a more transparent and accountable school board that put students first. And on election day, I won. And not only did we receive the majority of the vote, I also became the youngest elected official in our area and one of the youngest in the state in the country. So I would say the irony is that this very same board that dismissed me is the board I sit on now, and they didn't just expire my advocacy. I would say they created my candidacy because I would have never ran for this position if it wasn't for decisions that came from the school board.
Let me just jump in real quick. I live in Arlington, Virginia. There's 240,000 people in Arlington. It's pretty densely packed. And I have 3 children who are a little bit older than you. And 10, 15 years ago, I realized the importance of transportation for kids. And I'm a big advocate of public transportation. We have the metro, we have buses here and everything. So I advocated to make Arlington County buses free for students, right? And it took about 10 years, but it eventually happened. And it is so gratifying to see kids queuing up at the public bus and then this expands their options, right? We have a school called Arlington Tech. And so a lot of kids want to go to Arlington Tech, but the whole transportation was going to be expensive for the county. It was going to be, limited. And why not just take the public bus, right? And so a lot more kids are able to participate in Arlington Tech because of this policy change. So tell me about kind of the ins and outs of filing the paperwork and raising some money and starting a website and then getting the word out.
Yeah. So the moment I knew I think I probably should run for this position, I looked into the paperwork and the petition to get myself just even on the ballot. This office requires 10 signatures from a registered voter in our town. And that was pretty easy to obtain. I went through neighbors and supporters of me who actually wanted me to run for office someday, and was able to get their support.
I didn't know it'd be so quick, though, right?
Yeah. Right, exactly. But I was able to attain my 10 signatures. I actually think I got a little bit more than that, and I went down to the county election office and filed my paperwork, and there they gave me all my details of being candidates, ensuring that my finances are properly filed with our state, which I didn't actually take on any finances for this campaign, no donations from anyone. I didn't want to take away from anyone. I think I could have won without any donations, and we did. I used my own funds to make campaign literature, and I went knocking on doors and handed out flyers with my vision for the future. And I also made a website, more of a business or personal website describing my journey through leadership and public service to give folks a better idea of where I stood and allowed them to see my journey through public service at just a young age at 19.
So what did your parents and your siblings think about you running for office?
They were pretty surprised, but they were very supportive. They knew that I always had a passion for helping others and trying to serve my community in ways that benefited all of our residents. And when they found out that I had the opportunity to run, they were very encouraging and supported me throughout my election. And eventually, after we won, they were at my swearing-in ceremony, and it was a surreal moment to watch them, just to have them watch me get sworn in as an elected official in our hometown.
So a little joke I have with people running for office is that it takes both moral and physical courage to run for office. Because here in Arlington, you have to buy a whole bunch of yard signs and you put them in the medians and you're dodging traffic and everything like that, right? So that's the physical courage. Also, sometimes dogs, right? So knocking on doors and you got a dog that is a little bit threatening. So what was you're knocking on doors? Did people ask you, hey, you a Republican or a Democrat? And how did you respond to those type questions?
Yeah, so that question came up a lot during my campaign. People wanted maybe a more conservative person, a more liberal person. And when I'm knocking on doors, people, are obviously and expected to be a little hesitant of maybe a political candidate running for office. And they want to know the motives behind why you're running. And obviously, a key part of that is, your political affiliation. And so when people asked my political affiliation, whether I was a Democrat or Republican, I gave them a simple answer: is that I'm an independent, and this position actually is nonpartisan. So you couldn't even run as a Democrat or a Republican. And I think it gave people a better perspective into why I was running on student issues to advocate for their concerns, rather than getting into partisan division within local government, because I really do believe that there's no need for real partisan divide in local government, especially. People expect education, infrastructure, and feedback from the community to be heard. And that's the platform that I ran on.
But as you're probably aware, though, that sadly local elections have become nationalized. And so a lot of the cultural issues and other issues at the national level, sadly are coming down to the local level. And I'm heading down to Richmond next week for Democracy Day. And every year, a Republican or a Democrat submits a bill to make local elections partisan. And I'm going to go down there to try to oppose that bill. And every year we've been able to defeat the bill, but sometimes it makes it out of subcommittee, sometimes it makes it out of committee. So it's really important that we advocate for that. So would you also agree that you'd like to keep local elections nonpartisan? And when I say nonpartisan, just means, you're not going to have the R or the D or the I or the G next to your name. So do you agree with that?
I would, especially in local governments. People care about real solutions to education, transportation, and public safety. And I think when you have a real divide, whether you're looking for a Democrat or a Republican in office, that obscures your decision making and only allows you to vote for your candidate of your party. I think, especially in local government in my town or our council, I don't think that they should be either Democrat or Republican. I think that they should just be folks nonpartisan, right? Folks that are running to run our local governments. These national issues don't really affect the running of a local municipality.
So did the Good Party reach out to you, or did you reach out to the Good Party, and maybe tell our listeners about the Good Party?
Yeah, so I actually reached out to the Good Party. I found out about them when I was researching how to run as an independent, and they gave me a lot of resources to ensure that my candidacy was extremely successful, like voter data and mapping for canvassing for the different houses, and talking with voters and their voter history to see if maybe they voted in the last election and maybe they didn't vote in the last election, and maybe they might skip out on this one. But they have been a real support of my campaign, and being a young person, they were very very supportive of my race, and gave me the courage to continue on and to run a successful campaign at the end of it.
I think they sponsored like over 3,000 candidates around the country. I don't know how they did this with such a small staff. And it sounds like you actually had personal conversations with some of the staff members up there. They must work 14 hours a day to cover the clock up there. So I encourage everybody to check out the Good Party. I'm also very involved with the Forward Party. Are you familiar with the Forward Party at all? Mm-hmm. And Christy Todd Whitman, who's a former governor of New Jersey, she's co-chair or something like that. So I'm a big fan of the Forward Party. Let me go into some other issues here. What are some of the key priorities you have for your school district?
Yeah, so I think it's extremely important that we meet the needs of our community. As I mentioned previously, the decisions that came out prior to my term in office were not those that were supported by the community, and those that almost didn't make sense at all. Stopping busing for students or giving them an alternate lunch, they really caused outcry and more or less created a divide between our residents and our local government that's running our school. So I think now in my term, and hopefully I am able to accomplish this, a more transparent and a more active approach in local government and a school board that takes the concerns of our residents seriously. And like I said before, meeting the needs of our community and ensuring that decisions that cause outrage don't ever happen again, and that we're thoughtful and we think through our decisions before we just announce them on our residents.
One thing I'm really tracking lately is, sadly, the decline of local journalism and how people consume news. And one of the things I'm really worried about is how everyone is in their silos, and the algorithms will only give you information about things that you're interested in. You know, when I was growing up, and even more recently, we subscribed to the Washington Post and to the local newspaper, the literal paper newspaper. And as you flip through the paper, let's say you really just wanted to read the sports page. Well, you're almost forced to read the front page also, and even some articles that you may not be interested in. You know, the headline catches your interest, and you start reading it, even though it's not about sports, right? Mm-hmm. And sadly, most people can set up their social media feeds to just ignore all the national news, local news, whatever, and just go to the things that they're interested in. Maybe they're interested in pop culture. Maybe they're interested in sports or gaming. You know, tell me your experience as a young person with how people get their news.
Yeah, so what I can tell you about our residents is that I would have to say that they are very involved in the news of our town and our local area. And the reason I say that is because I'm active on social media, and I'm subscribed to our town's Facebook group, which is, has a lot of residents in there, and they all actively share news stories about our town. And they come from a plethora of news articles, whether that's the Philadelphia Inquirer or the local paper, the Deptford Sun, or maybe the New York Times that write articles about our town and or our school districts. So I'd have to say that they're very engaged and on top of issues that affect them. And I would say that they're pretty well informed on the issues that are going on in our town.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up now. I'd like you just to kind of speak directly to the audience here of, maybe there's some young person in Colorado or Michigan or something who sees this podcast and they're like, maybe I can actually run for local office. So what would be your words of wisdom to some of those people out there?
Of course, I would say that absolutely you should do it, but make sure it's for the right reasons. Too many people, they may have thoughts that they're not qualified or they don't have enough experience or, who would even vote for me? But the truth is, the best leaders aren't always the ones with the most experience. They're the ones who care the most. I was just a high school student speaking at board meetings when I got started, and I never would imagine that one speech would set off a chain reaction that would lead me to being an elected official. So I would say that change does not start with politicians. It starts with people who refuse to accept the status quo. So if you're watching this and you're thinking about running for local office or standing up for what you believe in, I would wholeheartedly encourage you to speak up and get involved, because my story is just one of thousands. Young people across this country, students and everyday citizens, are stepping up to make change. And I would say that if we work together, we can build a future that not only is just better, but actually represents all of us.
Justin, I really appreciate your time and being on the Independence for America podcast. For everyone out there in podcast land, I encourage you to subscribe. And if you have a few extra dollars, it could be $20 or $50, go ahead and become a founding member or paid subscriber to Independence for America. Again, thanks a lot, Justin. And hope to see you soon as you run for higher office. Thank you.
Thank you so much.